Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Non-Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Manny Lamson, and on today's episode, I have a great friend that I met through TikTok. His name is Will, currently getting ready to go through Navy OCS to become a pilot. And what I love about his journey and his motivation, his dedication is he's from a very, very small town, grew up with very strong military ties throughout his family, always knew he wanted to fly since the second grade and never gave up. He had multiple opportunities in life that sort of threw him a curveball. He had to switch paths, switch gears, and he continued to shoot for the moon. And that's what we talk about as well. Shooting for the moon to set yourself up for success. A couple other things we talk about is culture. I bring up the topic of culture. He brings up the topic of how to prepare for some training situations you may be going through. So I talk about a lot of the training situations I've had in my career, how to prepare for them and how to get ready for those. But one of the things I love about Will is just super motivated, super dedicated, and just a great guy to listen to and just build relationships with. So with that being said, I hope you enjoy the episode. And like I say all the time, please share, save, like, follow. If you want to reach out to me on Instagram's easiest way at Manny Mustache. But other than that, let's get some learning on. All right. What's up, everybody? We're back with another non-standard episode. I'm your host, Manny, and I got my boy Will on. For those of you that are wondering, Will has been on before. I've had him on 2 question and answer episodes, which were amazing. But now we're bringing him into the fold so you guys can listen to him, hear his journey, hear where he gets his leadership traits from, and what's motivating him to stay on board, to keep pinging me with questions, giving me good feedback and good data. So I'm excited. If you guys, like I say, if you guys hear any barking or growling, I am outside with my dogs. I have no idea what they're going to do, but we will just let it roll. With that being said, Will, just like you've heard on all my episodes, we'll start with the 3 H's. Hometown, heroes. Because I don't know if we ever did that on your question and answers, but we'll do it on this one. Hometown, heroes, hardship.
So, yeah. Hometown, heroes, hardships. Hometown, Valley Falls, Kansas. It's very small. Roughly about 2,000 people. I graduated the class in 19.
19 people.
Yeah, 19 people. There was 25 in my grade.
I thought my school was small. I came from town like 5,000, 6,000 people. I think we had like 100 and something in our graduating class, like 600 over on the high school, and that was small where I grew up.
Yeah, 100 was our whole high school together.
Do you guys have sports teams or anything?
Yeah, we had 8-man football. Like halfway through high school, we dropped from a 2A to a 1A. So basically they said, oh, you're a small school, but now you just became an extra small school. So you have to travel 3 hours to play anybody. So yeah,
Jeez.
that was fun. We had track, we had baseball, we had basketball. We also had trap shooting, which that was an interesting add-on because that didn't really come about until my sophomore year. And one of the parents, I guess they did it like through 4-H or some other group, and they're like, "Oh, you could do it through Keisha. It's a Keisha sponsored event." Which Keisha is like the sports organization. It's kind of like NCAA or whatever, but for Northeast Kansas. So they're like, "Hey, we got a quarry. I know everybody has a shotgun of some sort. Bring out your shotguns and let's get a team started." So yeah, I joined that. So yeah, that's kind of describes me. I'm a good old boy. Grew up in the sticks. So yeah. But even with that mentality of like being in the outdoors, getting my hands dirty, I always had, and I have to thank my dad for this. I always had an interest in STEM. He always kind of pushed for me. There was one thing I always remember him telling me growing up, which was, "Son, become better than me." And I kind of consider my dad a wise man. Smart, yeah. Smart in some aspects, but definitely wise. And that was kind of one thing is like, okay, try to do better than what he did. And I did not realize this until way later on, but my dad was a high school dropout. And he got his feet and started actually maturing once he joined the Navy at 18. So that's where he got his real start. But he is definitely one of my heroes. No matter what happens, he always tends to bounce back. And I mean, from just as far back as I can remember, he was a forklift driver at a steel refoundry, and now he is. I like to joke he's a real life Oompa Loompa. He makes chocolate all day at Mars. So, M&Ms, Twix, Musketeers, whatever you can think of that Mars makes, they make it over where my dad works. And it's kind of like that goes to show me how much just sheer willpower and determination can get you. He's had some misfortunes along the way. He's had some bumps along the way, but that's never really stopped him from trying to become better. So yeah, he's definitely one of my heroes. My mom's definitely another one of my heroes. She dropped out of high school. Oh, not high school, excuse me. She dropped out of college. First semester. She came from a well-to-do family, and it was kind of the expectation that she'd come here to KU. She attended a semester, and she was like, "This isn't for me." So she dropped out. Had a very abusive relationship. Left the relationship. Met my dad, and my dad actually encouraged her to go back to school and become a nurse. And she's one of the best nurses I know. Also, like I said, a lot of hardships along the way, a lot of work at one hospital for a little bit, and then she, unfortunately get let go and go to another one. But she always stuck it out. So yeah, those are my folks. Another good male role model I had growing up was my brother-in-law, which he was dating my sister when I was about 4. And like he would always be the older brother I never had because I had 2 older sisters. But I just remember I was about 9 or so, and he came and told my sister, like, "Hey, I signed the papers. I joined the Air Force. Yeah, I'll be down Lackland." I remember seeing him off at the recruiting station. And then we went to go see him in tech school down Kiesler, and then he went off to Germany. And he's done amazing as an airman. He is a master sergeant right now, in the Air Guard. I'm extremely proud of him, and he's kind of like one of those also, like, I know I have to do a little bit better than him because he's the saying, like, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants is a real thing. These people laid the foundation for me to become better. I've had some also non-family heroes. My deputy commander of cadets, her name was Katie Mazos. I just remember me being a little freshman in high school, and I came to, because I saw the Civil Air Patrol commercial, and I really wasn't fitting in anywhere as far as school goes. Like, I wasn't really a sportsy guy. I was really like one of the very few nerds. And I'm like, I want to do something significant. And just late night working on homework, I saw this commercial, and it's like, "Hey, do you want to save lives? Do you want to get disciplined?" Like the old, like, "You want to go see the world?" Kind of old Navy commercials. You be all you could be. It was a Civil Air Patrol commercial. And I started looking into them, and it's like, oh, they have a cadet program, and my school didn't have a JROTC. So I'm like, oh, it's right down the road. It's there, and the possibilities for me to grow. I saw so many pros going into it, and it's like, and I also wanted to join the military, and so I joined up with them, and she kind of took me underneath her wing, and she really kind of helped guide me in my leadership, because I really didn't have any big leadership roles beforehand. I usually was just a grunt. I was doing paperwork. I was doing the yard work. I was working, but I wasn't leading anybody. And she kind of was like, "Hey, this is something you should do," or, "Hey, this is something you shouldn't do." And she really kind of showed me what was meant to be a servant leader. So I have to thank a lot of my leadership skills to her. So shout out to her. She is now Staff Sergeant Mazos up in Alaska doing public relations. So, yeah, that's one of my heroes. And then I have like some corny, like, I didn't really have football heroes or baseball heroes growing up. Like, I know everybody has some. I could name off like Brett Favre. Okay, he was cool. Vince Lombardi. I know there's all Packers. Joe Montana from the Chiefs. My dad always talked about him. But like my real heroes were like Chuck Yeager and John Glenn, Alan Shepard. Like I can name off so many random aviators, and people were like, "Who's that?" And it was kind of funny because like just circumstance. One of the most famous aviators everybody knows, Amelia Earhart, grew up in Atchison, Kansas. That's 30 minutes away from where I live. So
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Man.
So it's like I knew the story of Amelia growing up. I actually did a full-on report about her in second grade because I was so fascinated of what she had to overcome to become a pilot. And that's where kind of like the seeds of aviation got sown in. And like I said, I always knew I wanted to join the military because my dad would always tell me stories about the Navy and what he did, and the media at the time, because this was like 05, 06, and you saw like what was going over in Iraq and Afghanistan, and 9/11 was still kind of fresh in everybody's mind. So like I knew what was going on, and I mean, yeah, I do admit it was the cool. Oh, we could shoot guns, blow up stuff. Yeah, that was cool. But as I got older and as I matured, I realized it was way more than that, and it became more of I need to do it for everybody who came before me. It's time for me to take my post. And yeah, it became a I want to do it to I need to do it mentality. To serve my country in some shape or form. So that's where my journey of wanting to become a military officer really began. And yeah, so that kind of leads into a lot of hardships. And I mean, I've been blessed. God has definitely blessed me with good people in my life and good role models and good opportunities. I have to admit, like I said, Civil Air Patrol really helped get me on my feet and understand what I was getting into. And I got my first flight lessons from them. I got my first leadership experience from them. I got to do things I never thought I was going to do at 15, 16. But definitely, like I said, coming from a small town and a small school, you didn't have a whole lot of opportunities outside of that. And that's where you really had to take the initiative and you had to go look for those opportunities. So I tried to do everything I could underneath the sun, trying to better myself physically, mentally, and just I would also say emotionally, just try to become the better person that I was the day before. And one of the big things that I always struggled with was my weight. It runs in the family. I know. It is a little bit of genetics, but also it's kind of like looking back at it now, it's like, man, I was not exactly the healthiest eater. And I was kind of like, oh, biscuits and gravy for dinner? Cool. Biscuits and gravy for breakfast? Cool. It's like, yeah, that probably wasn't the best. So I was a big kid. I was heavy as 247. Yeah, I was a big boy. But once like my sophomore, junior year, it really kind of hit me. It's like, okay, you're coming up on close to you're leaving high school and you're about to go to college. Now you need to get serious. So I started shedding pounds. By the time I left high school, I was 190. And then COVID hit. And it's kind of funny, especially talking about COVID, because everybody, especially now being a senior in college, you're like, how's your college experience been? And I'm like, I don't know really how to answer that question, honestly, because this whole time, like, I came in during COVID, I was expecting a whole lot, but I didn't get the real college experience of like, oh, you're getting old, you being part of all these clubs, you get to meet so many cool friends. And I've met people that I've still talked with since my freshman year, but it hasn't been what I planned out, but I definitely try to make the best of it. Yeah, COVID kind of threw some things off. I came in, I joined the AFROTC unit, trying to compete for a scholarship. Unfortunately, like I said, COVID really did throw a monkey wrench in all that. And they were like, hey, just remember it was like the last week our XO brought all the freshmen in. And they're like, hey, we all know you want to join the Air Force. We commend you for that, but we don't have any slots for you. So all the seniors who are graduating right now are going to be waiting over a year to go to any sort of training, because so many of the older guys were staying in that they were expecting, we are expecting, say, 2,000 to separate. Well, that 2,000 didn't separate. So they're staying in their jobs. And they're like, well, we don't have room for you guys. You guys got to go somewhere else. So I was like, the Navy was like, hey, you know how to fly? I was like, yes, sir, I do. And they're like, okay. So they threw money at me. I did a year and a half with the Navy ROTC unit, and unfortunately that didn't work out as well. And the next day I walked down to the recruiter, like right down the street from where I lived, and he was a Navy officer recruiter. Ensign, now Lieutenant, junior grade, Buter is his name, Shane Buter. And I sat down. He's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to be a pilot in the Navy. He's like, okay, this is what you need to do. Did those things. I got, kept up the good grades. I went to MEPS, passed MEPS with flying colors. Did really well on the ASTB, which the ASTB for all y'all is the Aviation Selection Test Battery. And that consists of basically academics, a personality test, and navigation and hand-eye coordination. So that's what they kind of calculate to whether or not you're going to be a good pilot or naval flight officer, WISO for the Air Force. So yeah, I scored well in all those, and just last week I got the call. He's like, Will, are you sitting down? I was like, yes, sir, I am. He's like, well, I got good news. You're going to be a Navy pilot. So all you need to do now is focus on good grades and start prepping yourself to go to OCS in Newport, Rhode Island. So that's kind of a little bit my story. I've had some hiccups and hardships along the way, but I have to thank my buddies for this, and I thank God that I have good people in my life, because I do not know if I would be talking to you like this right now if it wasn't for that, because about roughly less than a year ago, more than a year ago, I was at the lowest point in my life. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I still in college? It was right after I left the Navy, the Navy ROTC unit, and that was also just that spring. I lost my niece to cancer unexpectedly, and it was rough on our family, but it's also rough on me because I felt like I failed as an uncle and as a brother, because it's just the traditional, like, the man's supposed to take care of the family, and having a child pass away is like one of the biggest failures in my mind. But I know it's something out of my control, and God's plan had something else for her, and she didn't suffer. I thank God for that. But you start asking a lot of questions like, why is this happening? I followed A, B. I should be at C, not Z or D. I should be at C. I'm not there. Like, what's going on? And my best friend sat me down, and he got me on the right path. And he hooked me up with a group of guys called Chi Alpha, and they are my extended family. And I love those guys, and I'd do anything for them. And also, shout out to one of my buddies, Jake Schroeder. We all call him Reese. He graduated OCS back in December, and I kind of helped him out with his journey trying to get into the Navy. He had a kind of similar story. He tried ROTC, but it didn't work out for him, so he wanted to go back and serve. And now he's an ensign supply officer, and he's doing well. And he's like, "Hey man, you're doing good. Keep pushing." And I hope to see him in the fleet. So yeah, I have to thank those two guys. Honestly, they, like I said, at the lowest moment when everybody else was hopping off the bandwagon, they stayed. They stayed and definitely helped me. So yeah.
Nice. A couple things I'll mention that I love what you said. You said you were working on a lot of your dreams and they all led to hardships, which is crazy, right? Like how many people expect their dreams, well, they should expect it, but to be hard, right? A lot of people think going for the dream is going to be easy. That's why some people do these type of dreams, because they're easy. But you sort of took it in stride. Like, I knew these dreams were going to be hard. I knew they were going to be hardships, but you still did them. Like, you could have turned away whatever and just thought like, oh, doing this is now going to be hard. I'm not going to do it. But you kept doing it. And I think that shows a lot of persistence and just grit to, just like you said, when you're in second grade, like wanting to fly, you're just like, hey, door A closed, door B closed. Like, oh my God, how many doors are there? Who knows? Let's just see if we can keep opening them. And that's really hard because I've went through multiple times in my life where I was like, I'm only going to focus on one plan, right? Like this most recent thing for the TAC-P side, I was only focused on that because I didn't want to have a plan B. And I didn't get it. And then I was like, shoot. Luckily, there were like smaller doors, just not as big, so I didn't want to look at them, but they were there. So it was great to hear you talk about like, hey, when a door closes, I think there are always other doors. And a lot of people just really focus on that one. And then they sort of just don't even look. They sit in that room, hypothetically, if they're trying to leave a room, they just sit in that room with the lights off instead of just like feeling around the wall for another door.
I mean, yeah, I like I said, growing up, especially in high school, when I was looking at my options, is like, I had this idea like to be this perfect officer, this Patton or this Nimitz. Like, you had to go to the Naval Academy or West Point or Air Force Academy, and you just be this shiny penny. And I look back at now, it's like, nah. There's a Japanese proverb that I love. It's like, and it goes, "There's more than one trail up the mountain." And that is so true, because I've had friends. Yeah, they've succeeded in the Air Force Academy. They exceeded in the academies. There's others that succeeded in ROTC, and there's others who succeeded in OCS. And I guess it just happened to be in the cards that mine was to be OCS. But I'm glad I went through the process of trying to get into the academies. I'm glad I spent time in ROTC, and now I'm going to OCS and I get to experience that. So I know as an officer, I've had like a nice little batch of flavors that some airman or some sailor comes to me and they could be like, "Hey, Willhite, I want to be an officer. How do I do that?" I'm like, "Okay, these are your options. So, like, this is the process how to go to this one. I don't know what's going to be like when you get there, but I know some friends who can help you out. Here's the process to go through this one. This is what life is going to look like for you for 4 years. And this is going to be what your life's going to look like for 13 weeks. So it's up to you." So yeah, like I said, I'm glad I went through those experiences, because looking back at senior me in high school and senior me now, I've definitely night and day difference. And I'm happy I went through those hardships, because I know those hardships were necessary for me to become a better leader.
And then for everybody listening, just how old are you?
I'm 22, sir.
Okay. So you are definitely the youngest I've had on my show. And that's why I love doing this podcast, is because my intent is to reach out to the younger, I say younger, but future generation, right? On where are they getting their motivation to lead? Where are they getting their stories from? What is their drive? I think we have seen this shift of a lack of drive in some people in the world. So I want to dive down and see like why, but I also want to reach out to the ones who have the drive, so other people can listen and be like, "Oh man, okay, that's good. I needed to hear that," or "That's good to know about," or just, and also for other people just to hear stories, because our experiences, we can only tell so many people, but if we can have our stories to share, it just reaches so many more people out there that are on the same path and journey. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. Yeah, thank you for the 3 H's. It connects a lot of dots, and I love how you've always had that passion, and you just kept towards it. It's really cool. And I'm starting to learn more about some of that military history as well as I read books. I read a little bit about Napoleon. I'm about to read one about Churchill here. It's, that my wife was sort of like making fun of me a little bit ago. I can't remember what I was watching, but I was watching a random documentary on Netflix. She looked at me and she's like, "You're old now." And I'm like, "Why?" "You like documentaries on war." And I'm like, "Is that like a bingo card, for like getting older when you have like war documentaries or books now on your shelf?"
Yeah, war documentaries, mowing the lawn with the white Adidas's, barbecuing, and or camping, which I fill out like 3 of those. So.
Yeah. All right, so we know who you are, where you're coming from. I'm going to throw out some questions to you, and then you're going to throw a little back to me from what I've learned and gathered this week. So this week for me has been all about culture. I've already talked about it on my last podcast. I already had a brief about it a couple days ago. I had another seminar on it this morning, so I'm going to continue the theme because it's a huge conversation in a lot of places in the military. My question to you is, when you get ready to go to a new place, how do you fit into the culture there? And then if it's bad, how do you know? So 2 questions right there. How do you fit into a culture if it's already developed? And if it's bad, how do you notice?
So one thing I've been told and one thing I try to learn is no matter where you go, like I said, I've been Civil Air Patrol, AF ROTC, Navy ROTC. One thing I always try to do is first just keep my mouth shut. A lot of people don't do that. It's just keep your mouth shut and listen and observe. And that's and you probably know this from your time going from enlisted to a butter bar. Like the butter bar is like, okay, your job is to learn, and that's how I kind of take it in. Is like my job is not to show off what I know. My job is to learn what they are trying to teach me. So that's when you're into a new culture is definitely stop, watch, listen. Okay, I need to do A. I need to do B. I shouldn't do C. I shouldn't do D. Now to your follow-up question, how do you know it's bad? I think honestly, that's when it comes down to a gut feeling. Like, if you ever been in the situation like where you're sitting or you're doing something and you're like, man, this is not right. Because I think a lot of people suppress that instinct a little bit. Is like, because they don't want to be seen as wimps or they don't want to be seen as the crybabies. But it's like there's a reason why you're saying no, and it's because you know better. And like I said, and honestly, that's something I've been working on myself, is not just taking things by word of mouth. It's like, okay, you tell me, if you do A, you'll get B. Well, I know A is morally and ethically wrong. Should I go through with it? Probably not. And like I said, that's where I kind of I kind of draw back to my teachings from the church. It's kind of like, okay, what, and usually I kind of, what does the word say about a situation kind of like this? So that's where I kind of like, hey, like, yeah, I could benefit myself if I do thing A and we get B and it makes us look good, but that thing A could inadvertently hurt somebody else, or it could put somebody else out, like disadvantage them. And as you know, through all your trainings, don't lie, cheat, or steal. It's like, well, if thing A violates those 3 in any sort of manner, should I be doing it? Probably not. But yeah, and like I said, and once you get into a bad culture, and try to survive a little bit. That's something also I'm trying to work on. Is like, yeah, you gotta survive. You gotta play the political game. You gotta follow Machiavelli a little bit, because you go full brute force. Like, hey, this is not right. There's gonna be a lot of guys who are gonna be like, well, you just showed up here. How do you know what's right, what's wrong? definitely when it comes to once you kind of secured yourself a spot, you try to teach the younger guys that are coming in. So like say I'm a 03 and I get some 01s or 02s that are coming into the unit, and you could impart some wisdom onto them. Do it. Impart that, because that's where the change happens, is kind of the newer guys. You get a good foundation, your runts, if they're on the same page as you could definitely change that culture. Because the guys who have been there for 20, 40 years, I always say, like, oh, change comes from the top down. That's not always the case. There's some people are stubborn, straight up. And until those guys retire or leave or go to a new command, they're stuck there. You're stuck with them. But the new guys, you can teach, you can mold. They still have a lot of forming to do. They got a lot of polishing to do. And if you polish them to the culture you want, that's where you get the most benefit from, than trying to change the dude who's been doing it for 15 years and is not exactly the best or is bad. So, yeah.
Nice. No, it's good. You hit, and you covered just what we talked about yesterday, is you will feel a bad culture.
Mm-hmm.
You'll feel it. You'll walk in, it's quiet. There's not a lot of communication. It's just a vibe. And that's it right there. I do love the perspective of just coming in and listening. You know, we have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason, right? Like, there's a lot of leadership that can be taken from just listening. As far as, where do I fit? What should I do? Instead of asking all those questions right away, sit back a little bit, soak it in, try to answer the questions yourself. And then when you're ready, you know, you're established, you've done some work, then you can start opening up. Hey, I noticed this. I noticed that. How can I change this? There's a lot of change right now in the military where the younger generation are coming in with a lot of change now. They think they can just say it and ask why and do all this change because we're telling them, if you want to change. But in hindsight, we're telling them, learn your job, listen, see what you can change a little bit. And then when you got your foot in the door, you've got dirt on your tires or whatever, then you can start implementing change. But it's a hard situation. Like, I've been there where I've had airmen come in that want to implement change right away. And that's just their mentality. I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes. I get it. But then they're sort of turned off to like, oh, now you don't want to hear my change. Oh, but I'm like, that's not it. Like, why don't you sit back a little bit? Maybe your change is there, or maybe it doesn't have to be implemented as crazy. It's just a couple fine tweaks instead of a whole new idea. So that's what I see there. It's hard now for the younger generation to sit back, listen, soak it in, and then implement. But it makes its benefit in time,
mm-hmm.
which is what's key. So yeah, that's good. All right, next question will be, how do you stay motivated?
Like I said, how do I stay motivated? Well, it's hard to explain, but it's kind of like I always have this picture of what I want my future self to be, what I want him to look like. And I just remember, like, when I was trying to go for the academy, is one of the boards asked me, they're like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And I straight up told them, I see myself on the deck of a carrier getting ready to take off. Like, I see myself in the cockpit, full flight gear, ready to go, and defend my country. And I know the only way to get there is to better myself now, because tomorrow will come. You could always put tomorrow. Tomorrow's today. Tomorrow is now. So we gotta fix that. We gotta prep ourselves. We gotta prepare ourselves. And then, like, also, like, you were talking about war documentaries. I watch war documentaries for the stories of sacrifice. I know that sounds corny and all that, but like, you read some of the citation of Medal of Honor winners. You listen to some of the stories they tell, and it's like, man, if he could do that just by sheer willpower or sheer love for his dudes, then I could do whatever I need to do today. I could get out of bed and do 50 push-ups. Like it's that simple. And like I said, my family, and I also have this weird, like, I don't want to, I mean, if I fail myself, okay, happens. I don't want to fail other people. So that's where my motivation comes in. Like my dad, I always think of, like, I heard this from a SEAL. He's like, I could not imagine, like, if it was just me, I could care less if I quit. But I couldn't imagine making that phone call to my dad saying, "Hey, I quit buds. I didn't make it." Like, I don't want to make that phone call. So it's kind of like, that's how I keep myself motivated in trying to become better. Is like, I don't want to be the guy who, or like you, how you have children. Do you want to look at your children one day and say, "Oh, I didn't do it because it was too hard, or it was going to take a lot of work"? Do you ever want to have that conversation? No.
No.
Yeah. I don't want to have that conversation either. So I'd rather say, "Hey, I went for it. I did it. I stumbled. I fell. I dusted myself off, and I did it again." And it's, you could say, like, "Hey, I tried it a couple times, and something better came along, and I did that instead, and it worked out." Or, "Hey, I stumbled. I scraped my knees. I scraped my elbows, and I made it. White knuckling the whole way." That's how it works. That's how life works. So that's how I keep my motivation. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to reemphasize for people listening out there. If you think it, you see it, you do it, you become it. It starts with the thinking of it. A lot of people skip the thinking of wanting to do something and think they have to automatically jump into doing it, or if they can't do it, it'll never happen. But it starts with thinking. If you want to be something in your life, just start thinking about it, and you'll see it. So I just read it. Oh my God. In the last book I read, dang, it's gonna bug me. She talks about, that if you want to think something, you'll see more of it, right? So, like, if you're gonna buy a car, there's that saying: if you want to buy like a red Ford, right, you'll see red Fords everywhere. The reticular activation system, the RAS in the back of your head, that's what it is. It's there holding memories in the back of your mind, and it's keeping them there because they know it's important. And she talks about this painting that she saw like a long time ago. And it was like a lot of money, but she saw it. And she was like, one day I'm going to have that painting. She didn't know why. She just really appreciated it. And so life went on. But for some reason, her mind kept that painting there. Like, and she couldn't afford it. And the story goes on. She ended up she became pretty successful. She's like, I want to get that painting. It was still there in her mind after like 5 to 10 years of not even thinking about it. But she envisioned it. She wanted it. She called the place where she saw it. She ended up meeting the author or the painter, got to know the painter, got the exact same one that she made a copy of. And so, like, when you think it, it'll happen. It's hard for people to do, though, because they put a time limit on it. And that's what she talked about, is not putting a time limit on some of these big goals. It's just, you can't. Because if you think it's going to happen, you just have to know it's going to happen. And that's one thing I take away with a lot of the way I think of things now. When you can take weight loss, and put a number on that because that's pretty controllable. But if it's like, I want to be a pilot, or I want to sit on that deck, and take off and go to war, you can't put like a time when you want to do that because that's going to limit you. But but I guarantee you 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road when that happens, you're going to have that flashback and be like, oh man, I remember when I was on that board and they asked me that question and I told them this is where I'm going to be. And you're going to be like, dang, that's crazy. That's what people should realize. It's that simple. If you want to do something, you just got to think about it, write it down, do a vision board, and it'll probably happen.
And like, especially for like my generation, we're all plugged into social media. I mean, that's how I met you. Like, most of my social media feeds, whether it be TikTok or Instagram, is like seriously a jet taking off every 2 swipes. I'm always reminded, like, what's your goal? Like, I want to be in that jet. So 2 other swipes. What's your goal? Trying to be in the jet. But it's kind of like one of the sayings my dad always used to tell me was the brain was the biggest muscle in the body. Because, like, if you could will it, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
If you want to run
exactly.
10 miles, like, if you're mentally saying, good, you're not stopping until you get to 10 miles, you're going to make it. You're going to hurt afterwards, but you're going to make it.
Yeah. All right. Man, you already hit my other ones. What fuels you? What's your goals? So that's perfect.
I would have to say one other thing that kind of fuels me is because everybody has kind of, like, for the most part, like a war hero in the family.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the stories I kind of had growing up was my grandma would always tell me about my great-grandfather. His name was Jesse Harold Turnipseed. He was an orphan from Kansas, and he joined the Navy. This was World War II, and later he became a pharmacist, instant pharmacist in Subic Bay. And he was there when the Japanese invaded, patching up Marines. When everybody else was like, hey, we're evacuating the Philippines, we're going to retreat, him and the other medical personnel said, no, we're staying, we're going to patch up these guys because we know the Japanese aren't going to treat them well. And he unfortunately did not come home. So that's kind of like a little bit of fuel. It's like my great-grandfather, it takes a little bit of pride in knowing, like, my great-grandfather said, I'm not leaving these guys behind. So that kind of gives me a little bit of fuel. It's like, if he could say, I'm not leaving these guys behind, I'm not going to leave my dream behind, I'm not going to drop my dream.
Let's flip the script. It's all you, my man. We talked a little bit about before, and I'm excited for this twist of what you want to bring to the podcast episode. And I think a lot of people will take some good notes from it as well. So let's go.
Yeah, so for, like I said, I'm heading off to training. So I ship out January of 2025. I have a lot of time to prepare. So time is on my side. So I want to ask you, being that you've been through many iterations of training, whether it be Lackland, ROTC, SEER instructor school, and also being an instructor in certain aspects, what is something you want to impart, like, give to me as I want you to take this to OCS to succeed?
Yeah, there's a lot. And these are in no order of, like, priority or preference or whatever. I'll just spit some out. One is you live by the gouge, you die by the gouge, right? So there's a lot of research we can do in a lot of these schools, and it's bit me in the butt a couple times, but it's helped me in a couple situations as well. But that's like, what's the saying? If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, right? So reach out to people that are already there. That's what I did going through the TAC-P selection, going through WISO school. I didn't do much on the SEER or the ROTC side. But, like when it came to like playing college football, that's sort of like a training, right? I reached out to people there. So start branching out. Because, there's definitely some gouge you can gather as far as, hey, here's what to expect for a normal training day, or here's when you're going to get up, the little things right there. But then obviously you can die by some stuff too, as far as if a training plan changes, they're going to teach you different curriculum. So you have to take it as a grain of salt, which is a huge learning curve as well. The other thing I'll say is get good at the basics. That's going to be a huge thing. So if you know PT, which is obviously a fine point of mine, but it's one you can control, you can excel in, you can lead by example in, you can already start advanced, because there's going to be some form of it really in any training. For anybody listening, in any training scenario, I'll just keep it to the military in general, there's going to be some form of physical fitness training adapted to it. Either a test, or you're working out as a team, or if you're not supposed to, you should be, to get ahead, because there's a lot of correlation to exercising and then learning as well for like your mental capacity, your stress and sleep, etc. So control what you control. You can control your habits. So if you know when you're going to get up at that time for your training, start doing it now. If you know there's going to be a certain structure to the day, start prepping for it now. Let's see. Gouge, control what you control, be good at the basics. I was also very fond of not wanting to learn too much about what I'm going to get into, so you appreciate the learning. Like when I was going through IFT as part of CISO school, which is, I think, instructional flight training at Pueblo, I could have started learning about how to fly a plane, how the mechanics work. But I knew from Gouge, they teach you from ground zero. You're going to go there as a guy like me who knows nothing about planes or mechanics, and they're going to teach you how to fly a plane. So I used that. I was like, I'm not going to stress myself out learning about an airplane, buying these books, or going out to get extra hours on a plane. Like I'm going to put those penguins aside. I'm going to focus these penguins on something else in my life. When I get there, I'll cross that hurdle when I get there. So, like, when you go through OCS, right, it's going to be very broad, because you're learning about officership, you're learning about leading. So understand that. Don't go in there expecting how to be a good leader or already having leadership tools. Go in with a clean slate, especially when for your setting, going into how to become an officer or a leader. Have your toolkit there in the back pocket in case you're asked to whip out some leadership traits, but still go in as a blank canvas. Also, there is benefit to being the gray man in training, right? So when I went through SEER school, I was the gray man, and it worked. I didn't have to be the brightest in the class. I wasn't aiming for DG. I wasn't at the bottom where I was the slacker always looked at. I was like right in the middle, just young Manny, just like nose down, trying to survive, trying to just not die. But I wasn't the best, but I wasn't the worst. So I was like, cool. That's how I was on because we were split up into a lot of teams throughout when it came to our biome training. So I was like never the best on my team. There were areas I was decent at, but I knew going through some gouts, you just have to graduate, right? It's just like college. You just got to graduate. So I was like, what do I got to do to get there? I'm not going to sacrifice extra time to have the fastest fire or build the fastest or the nicest shelter. There may be some problems with it, but that's how it is. So the gray man is an area where you may be able to get by to save yourself for later. Let's see. An officer cadet school, you will probably have some time. Like I remember going through field training as a cadet in ROTC, right? You go through your sophomore year. I've already been in the military for a few years. So when I went through field training, I knew I could be the gray man and make it through. Unfortunately, I didn't do that. I was in the top 10%. We called it Top Gun. I got that award because I realized, like, hey, I can be pretty good here. I can use my advantage to what I learned in the military. I can lead from the front. I knew PT was a huge part. So I jumped out front and led there when I could. But I didn't go in hard charging, ready to kick butt and take names. I did what you said. I led a little bit from the back. But it's also bit me in the butt leading from the back in some of my training. But, I'm where I'm at where I need to be because of all the learning from those training environments. All right, what else do I got? I would definitely start getting to know people. If I guarantee you there's probably Facebook groups for your OCS if you have a class, right? So get to do that. I did that for my TAC P selection, and it worked pretty well as far as I built a signal group for our team based off the email we got. We got to know each other, and we showed up there day one, and we're like, Jared, oh, it's finally great to meet in person. Or Wesley, I know who you are from Instagram. And they're like, oh, it's Manny, the guy who posts all these workout pictures. Like, it's good to meet you in person. And that was just us getting ahead of the game there. Let's see.
I do admit I have a good benefit now. Unfortunately, the guys I know I won't be in class with, but I'm graduating aerospace with them. One of the other guys who got his pilot slot, he's going in July after his eyes heal, and then another dude I know, we were both in Navy ROTC together, and he got his naval flight officer spot. So they're going to be back before I graduate in the fall. So I'm going to try to hook up with them and trying to pick their brains a little bit. But I did not know there was Facebook groups out there for oncoming classes. So
I wouldn't be surprised because I've seen them in a lot of the training I've done. Like when I went through SOS, I think there was a class for the SOS class. We made one for TAC P selection. Let's see, ROTC, there was a Facebook group right for the school. So I just jumped on that, and you can reach out there. There's probably a Navy OCS basic Facebook group, where you can jump on. And then there's probably people in there that are like, oh, I'm getting ready to go here, and you can reach out to them and build those connections there. Let's see. Yeah, anything else?
So yeah, live by the gouge, get good at the basics, control what you can control, branch out. I guess on top of that, so you said, be the gray man. I'm trying to shoot for, the Navy calls it distinguished honor grad.
Yep.
I'm kind of want to shoot for, like, I always have this mentality, like, shoot for the moon, and if you miss it, land on the stars. I'm shooting for that because I figured if I could shoot for that, I know I'll do well in my class. Like, even if I don't get it, I know I'll do well enough that I get to the fleet, they'll recognize my name. It's like, oh, I remember Will Willhite. Yeah, he was he was a worker. He was one of those guys that I know I can depend on. So would you have anything, like you said, you got Top Gun in field training. What would you say for that?
Yeah, so there's going to be a saying when you go there, there's always DG hunters, right? And those are people that make it known they're trying to get it. They usually don't get it because there's a lot of peer review that's going to go into these courses. And so if you go in expecting, or you're vocal about it, people are going to know you're a DG hunter, and you're not going to get probably the best peer reviews possible because you're either super loud, you're cutting people off, you're not listening, you're trying to do everything you want to do. So there's that side of it. The people who I saw get DG and win these awards and be the top people, they were willing to, when I say take charge, put themselves in uncomfortable situations, knowing they could fail, but early on. Because that's how OCS is probably going to be. There's probably going to be situations where it's like, all right, guys, day one, in field training, we had to create a squadron organization, right, with a commander and a deputy and all that. And nobody really probably wants to be the commander right away because they don't know what to do. So there's an opportunity there where it's like, if you look around, don't be put your hand right up, oh, me, look around. Hey, guys, I'll do it, let me jump out there, see what it's like. Cool. That's a great way to do it there, but you're humble about it, right? You're taking feedback, you're learning from it, you're developing, but you're showing people you're willing to lead and make that sacrifice. So there's that way. I would say get to know people because peer reviews come a lot in to do with it. So take the time to ask people their name, what motivates them, and also being that servant leader where if you're doing a leadership scenario, which you will probably do, let those people talk. Because that's what those other people, the instructors, are probably going to be looking at too. How well do they take orders? How well do they follow? How well can they step up when they have to? It's a lot of balance. But I saw from my DG people, they were social when it came time to be social, so they were able to get to know people. They led by example in areas where they could, so waking up early, maybe being the first out of their room in the hallway when you had to line up for formations, being noticeable when they had to be noticeable, but not upfront noticeable, taking the early chances for failure. And what else did I see? I'm trying to think of my SEER class. Jago was one of them. And that was tough. CISO school. CISO school, we had a lot of academics, so that came into it as well, right? So taking tests. I don't know. In field training, we didn't have a lot of tests. It was a lot of application stuff. So leadership courses, taking feedback really well is a good thing, and then implementing it. There's a lot, but some of the things I think that don't help people are always trying to be in front, always trying to be the first one to talk, always trying to be the last one with the word, and then just telling everybody you want to win it, right? It's good to have that drive, but like Michael Jordan, probably when he started playing young in his career was never I'm going to be the greatest of all time. He probably was thinking it, but I don't think he went up to his teammates the first day of Bulls practice and I was like, hey guys, I'm going to be the best basketball player of all time, right? He probably came in and worked hard, learned, but after a while, they probably saw it pretty quick. But
I definitely, that's one of my guilty sins, especially coming out of high school as a senior. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be the next Maverick. I'm going to be the next Jet Ace for the U.S. Because at the time, there was no, the last Jet Ace was Vietnam. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be the first Jet Ace of the 21st century. It's like, yeah, just focus on being a pilot. Yeah. If I had to go back and talk to my younger self, it's like, dude, just focus on becoming a pilot. Don't worry about anything else. Just focus on that.
No, it's still good to have them though.
Yeah,
I have them. and I had them. And that's just what kept me going too, like there's definitely areas in my life right now where I'm like, I want to be the best at this, because like you said, you've got to have that pedestal up there just to shoot for the moon.
Mm-hmm. Actually, something that you said earlier, I kind of a weird follow-up question. Did you ever, so you said you got some flight training as a CISO. Did you ever finish it?
So no, yeah, that was just hypothetical. Because a lot of people, when they get ready, they go through ROTC and they get a CISO slot, they'll start getting pilot hours to get ahead or think they need it. But I just realized, I was told hey, don't worry about even starting it or thinking about it because you're going to get taught that, it just wasn't a factor. But I didn't know jack from nothing when I went to IFT. All I learned was force, gravity, lift, and drag.
I mean,
4 things that make something fly. And I was like, cool, that's science.
Yeah, science, yeah. Or as my instructor always says, you need altitude, airspeed, and brains. You only need 2 of the 3 to survive, so you're good. You're good. So I'm like, all right. Yeah, those are kind of the really big questions I had. Like I said, this is definitely going to be a new experience for me. The longest training I've ever had was a week-long training, week-long trainings with Civil Air Patrol, and then the Navy ROTC unit. Here we had what was called new student orientation. And I mean, you went back to your dorm at the end of the night. It's not like you bunked with everybody. So and also I definitely know for ROTC, it's definitely a competitive environment that I definitely, one thing you were talking about culture earlier, the ROTC lacks in teamwork. So yeah, I definitely I feel like OCS will probably be a better fit for me because I know how to put aside my competitive nature to work with the team to accomplish the goal. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a night and day difference from coming out from an ROTC unit. And I just remember my buddy Noah, because he came back from Fort Jackson after his basic, and he kind of looked at me because we were talking about training stuff, and he's like, "Man, you have it so good." I was like, "What do you mean?" I just kind of wanted to hear his opinion. He's like, "You get to go back to your own bed every day. We didn't have that, so you're kind of taking it easy right now." But now I'm going to be somebody's going to have the rack above me, and somebody's going to be right next to me, and some other dude's going to be on the other side. So it's definitely going to be an interesting experience. Well,
that's cool, man. So remember, we always finish. Do you have a book?
Yes, sir.
What's your book?
Art of War, actually.
Okay, nice. Digging deep into the books library there, huh? What do you like about it?
It's a lot of little strategy, but it's the flexibility of I could use it for more than just warfare. You could actually use it in business if you want to. You could use it in sports if you want to. It's almost metaphorical in how the rules are played out. It's don't be the guy who chooses the battlefield, or there's some objectives that are not meant to be taken. There's some roads that are not supposed to be taken, towns that are not supposed to be destroyed. Those are those aren't the big picture. You want the ones that are going to help get you to where you need to go. So don't worry about that road. Don't worry about that town. Don't worry about that crossroad. You need to worry about this one. You need to worry about this one. You need to worry about this one. So
I love that. I love how you talk about it's not just for one aspect of life. You can use it for multiple things. The book I'll bring today to the table is Atomic Habits. Just a great book you can apply to daily, you can execute on. So people have heard me say before, I read sort of 2 genres of books, right? Books you can apply, you can take from, you can execute, and then books you learn from, like autobiographies, history, etc. Atomic Habits is one of the only books I have on my phone, is on the Kindle, since I read so much on paperback. And it's the reason I have it on my phone is I reference it so much. You base your habits on 3 people you surround yourself with, right? The close, the many, the powerful. That is one of my I have that bookmarked on my Kindle for a reason, and I talk to a lot of people about that, and I've seen it shift in my life through the different periods I've been in. And then I look back at those times in my life and I go, dang, my habits were definitely built around the people I surrounded myself with during this phase of my life and this phase of my life. So it's an executable book, very easy to read. But yeah, so that's what I got there. Any last party shots, Will? Like I said, I'll leave your info in the show notes. And yeah, dude, this was cool and it was great. I look forward to following up with you as you continue when you get ready for OCS and graduate and all that. So
yes, sir. I'm thinking maybe we could do one more one more episode before I graduate, and then definitely a follow-up episode, and I can share some of my experiences at OCS.
Yeah, and some more Q&As as well. So
yeah, and then maybe around that time you could help me prep for SEER school.
There you go. Gotcha.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much, sir. It's been an honor and a privilege. I'll let you go. Have a wonderful day.
All right, man. Take it easy, brother.